introduce our employees to the candidates. And we're thrilled today to have Carl DeMaio, who is running in the 52nd Congressional District of California. Now, I assume all of you know which congressional district you reside in. Is that correct? So, well, if not, we've got some tools which are made available to all of our employees, so you know where you live, how you can register to vote, where you can go to vote. So check those out. It's through the Ashford Advocates website, so be sure to visit that website and get some additional information. But, you know, we were riding down on the elevator. We had a pre-meeting with Mr. DeMaio, and we were joking. You've met him on TV, now you can meet him in real life, and here he is. And we're thrilled to have him here today. He is someone that has been a fixture here in local San Diego politics. He was the mayor of the city council when he was elected in 2008, and during his time on the council, he looked to forge bipartisan solutions for the citizens of San Diego. And during the last election cycle, he narrowly lost a hard-fought race to Bob Filner. And at this particular time, Mr. DeMaio has taken his hat in the ring to run for Congress and try to help us sort some of the mess out in Washington that we're dealing with on a regular basis. So we're thrilled to have him here today.
But I got a gift for every one of you. Everyone underneath your chair and underneath the tables back there are remote controls so that you can fast forward through all the nasty ads. You know, last time I was in this room, it was a debate in my race for mayor when I was running against Bob Filner. And it was supposed to be a debate. We had two podiums up here. And Bob Filner decided that he wouldn't come to Ashford because he said that you guys prey and take advantage of our veterans. And I said, this is baloney. And this is the sort of crap that comes up in political campaigns when these politicians get up there and they don't tell things that are true. And so as frustrating as these ads are right now, I think they're really just an indication of what's wrong with politics, is that you have people, instead of talking about real solutions and issues that people care about, they're just trying to smear the other guy. I'm the only one running a positive ad in this campaign. There's outside groups that are running ads against my opponent, which I've already said, stay away. You know, I can do this on my own. I think I've got good ideas of how we're going to fix problems. And those national groups, I think we need campaign finance reform to end some of this ugliness. But I'm running on a record of actually getting things done. I'm a businessman. I started a company called the Performance Institute, which does things similar to what Ashford does. We provide training and education to adults in the areas of performance management, project management, Lean Six Sigma, a lot of business concepts that you can apply. We focus on government, how to apply business techniques in government to cut costs and improve performance. And Lord knows we need a lot of that at every level of government. And then I spun off a second company called American Strategic Management Institute, basically like Bridgepoint. It basically has multiple labels, like the University of the Rockies and Ashford. Same methodology, same curriculum, but because we were focusing on the private sector, on internal controls, Sarbanes-Oxley, financial management, we basically took the same curriculum and charged higher to the private sector clients. Sold both in 2008 to Thomson Reuters, and decided to do something with my life to try to make a difference. I went into politics because I got fed up and frustrated with the nasty, incompetent culture that we had at City Hall. People were fighting, and we saw our city cutting services. In the 8 years that preceded me on the city council, when my opponent, Mr. Peters, was the head of the city council, in those 8 years, the city created a financial crisis that earned us the moniker Enron by the Sea. How many remember the pension crisis? And they were saying that we were going to go bankrupt, and we lost our credit rating for 5 years. The city council members, led by Mr. Peters, decided to try to raise taxes. They doubled our water rates, and so you saw people who were using less water, but their bill was still much bigger than it was just 6 or 9 months prior. Most importantly than anything else, they took important things away from us. This guy decided to vote to eliminate daycare. And those of you who know about single moms and working families, daycare is a pretty big deal. And so for needy families, that program was eliminated at the city. They reduced library hours 42%, and so our kids didn't have, the opportunity to go after school to a safe zone. Park and rec programs are decimated. And then something a bit more physical, They zeroed out slurry seal and road projects for 2 years, such that our roads started to fall apart. So we went from having decent roads to, when I was sworn in, the city was given the dubious distinction of having the 7th worst roads in the country, completely falling apart. It's like an oil change. If you don't slurry seal your streets every 5-6 years and stay on that schedule, they fall apart, and then it's a lot more expensive. I came into the office and I said, we need to make government work again. The problem with government is not that you're not sending us enough money. The problem is that we're not spending the current money you give us the right way. And so my change management efficiency work in the private sector, I decided to apply that to government. I said, give me your budget. I will go through line by line, and let's figure out how to save some money. And of course, everyone said, no, we got to cut more, and we've got to raise taxes. And I said, no, we can actually balance without that. We had that debate in this city, and I opposed the cuts to services, and I opposed, with your help, that sales tax increase in 2010, the Prop D sales tax. In the middle of the worst economy, they wanted to make it harder for people to make ends meet in San Diego. And then the day after we won that election, I rolled out something called the Roadmap to Recovery. Balanced the budget, it paid down our debt, it started putting money back into our libraries and after-school programs, started catching us back up on the emergency road repairs, and finally it reformed the pension system, which was the big, elephant in the room. It was the big problem that our city was being brought to its knees by, is the 6-figure pensions that these government employees were getting. Standard retirement age in the city is 50 years old for police and fire, 55 for everyone else. So those of us in the real world who are thinking 67, Social Security, Medicare, no, the joke's on us. You got to go get a government job, and you get your retirement age 50 or 55. And most importantly, the pensions were showing that the average employee working 30 years would get 127% of their highest last salary for life at age 55. I said, this is absurd. You can't sustain this. And the best indicator of why we can't sustain it is that you guys are billions of dollars in debt and you're taking library hours away from kids. That doesn't make sense. 6-figure pensions. Last year, we did this report yesterday, KUSI ran it. Last year, the city's highest pensioner took home $782,000. He's a police captain, retired 3 years ago. It's outrageous. It's outrageous the amount of money that they've been able to get in the pension system. So what do we need to do in Washington? We need to take the same approach. I don't care whether an idea comes from a Democrat or Republican. That's not the lens I use. I look for good ideas. If you have a good idea, I'm going to work with you on it. The first person I partnered up with on the council was Donna Fry, a Democrat. She's the surfer city council member. And she said, we need to make our city council more open and transparent. We need to open up the process, make sure people know what we're voting on before we vote on it. And so we got an open government bill put together, and within 90 days got that done. In Congress, one of the first bills I'm going to introduce is something called the Fix Congress First Initiative. It's very much along the same lines as the open government legislation I got done on council as one of my first acts. What does it require? Well, it requires that Congress has to live under the same laws as the rest of us, no special exemptions. Second, it takes their pensions and special health care subsidies away from them. It puts them in Social Security and Medicare. I have a hunch. If members of Congress didn't have these lavish pensions and subsidies on their health care for the rest of their life, maybe, just maybe, they would be a little more interested in the long-term solvency of Social Security and Medicare. Just a hunch. Third, read the bill first. All the time that they say it's 1,000 pages, we have to pass it to know what's in it. No. We would apply a 72-hour requirement that you post all laws online before they're voted on, so that if you're not going to read the bill, at least let the public read the bill and find out what's in it. Fourth, single subject. Single subject would say that if you're voting on a bill, it has to have a single subject. How do all the special interests get all the special subsidies that they get, and tax breaks and special consideration? They take a real popular piece of legislation like the Children's Welfare Act of 2015. Well, who's going to vote against that? Nobody in their right mind. Well, then let's go ahead and insert millions of dollars for mohair subsidies on the back end. Then you got these politicians who say, yeah, there's some things in there I didn't like, but on the whole I like children and their welfare, and that's why I voted for them. No, if you want to give mohair subsidies, then you're going to vote for the mohair subsidies as a single subject. You like children? Don't hide behind them in putting together something that perhaps the American people would not agree with, and they get stuck in a bill. Democrats and Republicans aren't going to like this bill. It kind of gives me hope that we're going to get it done because I think the people like it. It changes the rules of the game so that we can open up the process. The biggest reform in there, that, in my opinion, is no budget, no pay for real. And this is something I feel very, very strongly about, so much so that my opponent says that he's for it, but he's not. No budget, no pay for real would say if you don't pass your budget on time, and that means a real budget, you don't get paid. And by the way, you permanently forfeit your pay as a member of Congress. If you didn't do your job, you would not get paid. Members of Congress, their no budget, no pay is that if we put together a resolution and submit it, then therefore we've done our job. That's like a sales guy saying, I put together a proposal, give me my commission. I mean, I made the sale. Your boss is like, no, you put together a proposal. You didn't make the sale yet. It's nice that you wrote the proposal, but there's no sale. Our no budget, no pay reform would say, if you don't pass a budget and get the Senate and the House and the President to actually sign it into law, which means that you can actually fund the program of every department, then you don't get paid. The government shutdown occurred because Congress didn't pass a budget by September 30th. And it jeopardized a bunch of programs, and more importantly, you saw the studies. It cost more to shut down the government than it did to keep it open. It defies logic, but this is Washington math. This is Washington approach. If they actually lost their pay for real, then this wouldn't happen again. My opponent voted to give members of Congress their pay, even though they shut down their budget, shut down the government. That's not no budget, no pay. That's not accountability. And both parties are not going to like some of these reforms. And so I think that we have to have members of Congress that are willing to buck the parties from the standard party approach to do what's right for the people. I'll close on this. Most people, when they hear me speak, say, are you a Democrat or a Republican? If you can't figure out, I think I've done a pretty good job. I think I've done a pretty good job. Now, I'll tell you why I'm a Republican. It's a philosophical issue. And you Democrats in the room, and you independents in the room, I respect the fact that you've decided not to be part of the party. There's a whole list of reasons why not to be part of both parties. But I decided, philosophically, I'm more in line with the Republicans because I trust people with their money more than I trust government. And there's one thing, though, that's inconsistent about the Republican Party. They trust us with lower taxes to spend our money wiser than the government. They trust the free market to solve problems faster than government mandates. When we get around to these social issues, they don't have a whole lot of trust. They're not a whole lot on the side of freedom. Yeah, I'm criticizing my own party. I don't think a politician should tell you who you can love. I don't think a politician should tell you what your healthcare decisions should be. I don't think a politician should vote to give an agency the ability to look at your email or your cell phone records without due process under our Constitution. I think we ought to butt out of your lives, give you the freedom to make these decisions, and hope that whatever family value beliefs and faith beliefs that you have, that you figure out how to make it work on your own. And I think the American people are pretty much now, after all the divisiveness on these social issues, have pretty much thrown their hands up in the air saying, let me have the freedom to decide this and get out of it. You guys need to fix the economy. You guys need to balance the budget. You guys need to take care of our veterans. Do that and let us figure out the rest in terms of the social issues. And that's not made me very popular with some factions of the Republican Party. So be it. I think that we need to make this change in order to get past some of the divisiveness in Washington, and I'm willing to fight that battle if you are. With that, let me open it up to questions, comments, and suggestions. Don't be shy. You can ask about anything.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Put the mic just so everyone can hear you.
Pretty loud.
This is the loudmouth.
I will try.
Yeah.
Basically, our model here is pretty much the model of every educational system around the United States. Unfortunately, is based really on student loans.
Yeah.
How are you looking at revising the student loan kind of model? I know that there's been.
Thank you for asking that question. My opponent has come out with a bald-faced lie. He says I don't support student loans. We asked him, where did you get that? There is absolutely no statement I've ever made, no vote I've ever cast, no position I've ever taken against student loans. Actually, quite the contrary. Type in Google the words free to be plan and DeMaio. Free to be plan. What's the free to be plan? I released it a year ago, and it says that we ought to make student loans more accessible, college education more affordable. How we do that? We reform the interest rate structure that the federal government has on student loans. Right now, some of the student loans carry a 9% interest rate. I want to basically peg interest rates to the Treasury note. Far lower rate, one to maximum of 2.5% to 3%. I want to be able to allow kids to refinance their student loans without penalty. I want to be able to give them workout plans. Right now, the big banks don't give flexibility for kids or people with student loans to go through a workout plan if they suddenly find themselves without a job and say, hey, can I do interest only? Can I do a modified plan for 6 months for me to get back on my feet? What does the bank say? Sorry, the law doesn't allow us to do it. We want to push you into default so then we can go to the federal government and get our reimbursement under the insurance program. It doesn't make sense. And if the banks are telling us the law made me do it, well, it's time to change the darn law. And so the Free to Be plan makes those commitments. And I actually believe that that will allow us to service more loans in this country. As someone who was orphaned at 13, who was taken in by the Jesuits, and who had to get through college through student aid, and I realized when I got to Georgetown University on scholarship that my student aid and scholarship would only allow me 3 years, not a 4-year degree. So I took extra credit with a full-time job. This is a personal issue to me. For Mr. Peters to sit there and lie to people saying I'm against student loans because, you know what if he found out? If you poll student loans, it's pretty popular. And if I can convince San Diegans that Carl's against student loans, then maybe I could hang on to a job in Washington. It's outrageous. And that's why in my latest ad I look direct to camera and I say, I'm for student loans, I'm for college affordability, check it out. I don't know how to be more explicit about it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We know that the higher education model that we currently do, legacy costs due to taxes and those types of things, is relatively unsustainable. And, for example, companies like Ashford or universities like Ashford were attempting to at least try new models. Whether or not somebody agrees with all the components of it is a different argument. But what is the opposition to, or how do we plan to go ahead as a nation fixing our educational model unless we're willing to try new things or experiment in new ways?
I think you basically articulated it quite well. Remember, my company provided adult education, and these are individuals who had jobs, and they were trying to acquire additional skills so they could be more effective in their jobs and add on to their resume so they could get a better job. Ashford is meeting the market where it is, rather than these old legacy institutions stuck in an old paradigm saying, well, the market should just come to us and it should fit our model. And thank you for being an innovator. Thank you for plowing new ground. You scare the old system, the old paradigm. Why? Because you actually are responding to the market. Particularly when you take a look at veterans. And I know that there's this push by the Department of Education to calculate things to penalize Ashford and its model. Veterans have had a job, they've already had skill sets, and now they're going out into the real world with their families. Some of them have families. And Ashford, I think, is a great model that fits some of their needs, fits where they are in their lifestyle. They're not 18 years old. It's not as though they can say, well, I'm going to just stop for 4 years and I'm going to go into a dormitory. And that's not where they are. But Ashford provides them with an avenue to get the education they need to make something in a new career for themselves. And so we need to support that. And I'm going to be a vocal supporter in trying to advocate for your model. And if the legacy, we're not saying that the legacy universities are bad. There's still a market for them. I just think that as you are more and more successful, that they will have to make two decisions. Number one, how do they start providing more flexible education models? And number two, the costs that they have been able to run up, you'll start challenging their cost structure, and they're going to have to start getting more efficient, which helps everybody out. It'll create more affordability across the board. And I'm not going to be tenuous about this. I actually am going to be a very strong, vocal advocate because I know your industry. I was part of your industry in terms of continuing education for adults. Questions over here?
I've got
Yes.
it for you. I've been paying attention to the race pretty closely, and it's a very interesting race. And we see all the ads and all that. And one of the big things that you stand for is you say that you're not going to be divisive when you go to Congress. But then in the next breath, you say that you're going to take on your own party. In Congress, we have 450 some odd representatives. How do you plan on building? How do you plan to build partnerships and get things done if you're going to take on your own party and you're going to take on the other party?
I think that you need to be willing to take on your own party. To go along, to get along, frankly, it means that you're willing to let people be divisive and say, well, because they're part of my own party, I'm not going to call them out. If someone says we're going to put a bill on the House floor that tells people that they can't marry who they love, that they can't make healthcare decisions, that we're going to defund this program that provides pregnancy services to women, I'm going to say, are you out of your mind? This is outrageous, it's stupid, it's out of step with the American people, and it doesn't get people back to work, it doesn't balance our budget, it doesn't help people out. And you know what? I think most of you in this room would want me to raise that issue. And I'm perfectly fine taking the heat from some of the folks on the far right to do that. More importantly, I did this on city council. When Dick Murphy, before I was on city council, Dick Murphy was mayor. He was a Republican mayor. He was a good judge. I just don't think he should ever have run for mayor. He decided to say there was no financial crisis in the city, and that along with Scott Peters, he was saying the pension benefits were modest. We took them on. And I remember Republicans saying, you can't criticize a fellow Republican. And I said, I'm not looking at his party label. I'm looking at what's happening to our great city right now, and we need leaders who are willing to deal with the financial crisis. Jerry Sanders and I worked together to get pension reform done. And I think that Jerry Sanders and I have the same commitment that we want to get the city rolling again. But he came up with an idea to build a new city hall project downtown. I disagreed with that idea. I said in 2008, I think the commercial real estate market has a lot of vacancies downtown, and I think that we ought to be renegotiating our leases rather than building a new city hall. When you have a glut of 30% vacancies, which means you have a lot of office space that's not being used, what's government's first idea? Let's dump 1 million square feet of Class A office space into that market. Let's add to the supply when demand isn't even keeping up with current supply. And they decided that they would do this $400 million project despite the fact that they were claiming they had no money for pothole repairs. And so I said, this is absurd. I know a lot of the developers who were supporting me for my race for city council were very upset with me. They said, don't you realize this will revitalize downtown? I said, well, don't you realize we need to revitalize our neighborhoods? We won that debate. San Diegans stood with me. When Jerry Sanders decided he was going to back a sales tax increase, when the Chamber of Commerce decided to back a sales tax increase, I said no. San Diegans, 68% voted along with me. To simply say that everyone has to kind of toe the party line, I don't agree with that. If something is wrong, even if it happens in your own party, you need to have the integrity to stand up and speak out and try to do something to make them see that that's a mistake. And I'm willing to do that. And I think I owe it to my constituents to continue to do that. My hope is that we'll have some Democrats that will do that within their own party. I think both sides have their problems. My hope is that some Democrats are willing to stand up and take on their party to deal with some of the challenges there, to see if we can get both sides to start working more collaboratively together.
We're about 3 minutes to 1
Okay.
for those who have a hard stop and have to leave, feel free. But I think we're going to do 2 more questions.
All right, there you go.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for coming.
I have a question that I think touches each of our lives, and it relates to the Affordable Care Act. Would you support any revisions to that? And if so, would you mind sharing that with us this afternoon?
Yes, I want to make sure that we have more affordable, accessible health care, and that we don't sacrifice the doctor-patient relationship and the quality of care. You have Republicans who say everything about Obamacare is bad. You have Democrats that say everything about Obamacare is good. And I think that the American people are somewhat right there in the middle saying, let's see what we can take from both sides to make this healthcare system work. First, the things I like and the things I would keep. I don't think that you should be penalized for pre-existing condition. Particularly as you take a look at making healthcare more affordable and you're covering more individuals, the risk of illness and conditions is more dispersed. So you can sustain a policy that Obamacare requires, that health insurance companies should not penalize you because of a pre-existing condition. Second, if if you want to stay on your mom and dad's insurance past 18, by all means go and do it. There's going to be a cost associated with it, but I never understood why you couldn't do that. Third, I would keep the healthcare exchanges. Republicans get real upset with me on that. I would keep the healthcare exchanges, but I wouldn't let government be the ones to manage them and do the transactions. I think the market can do the exchanges. The reason why I like healthcare exchanges is that it really fits a need in the market to give bulk purchasing power to small businesses as well as self-employed individuals. The fastest growing segment of our economy are self-employed individuals, where they are literally, they're a Schedule C on their taxes. When they go to a health insurance company and say, can I get a policy, they get a huge premium that they are charged. If you're in a large company, the premiums are lower because they've got bulk purchasing. Let's use the exchanges to fix that flaw in the market. I would go even farther, and Republicans are talking about this. I don't think a government bureaucrat or your employer should tell you what your health care should be. So I want to pass a law that says anyone who gets an employer-sponsored health plan, health policy, and I don't know what Bridgepoint offers or Ashford offers, but you get a menu from your employer. What if you don't like that? Well, pick one of them, and then under my healthcare reform proposal, you'd be able to take that health insurance policy and convert it for cash value on the exchange for another policy that you want to buy. So, and this is, I believe, fitting the new market. The old paradigm, you went to work for Ford, you worked for 30 years, and you retired a Ford man or a Ford gal. The new market is you might have 3 careers in your lifetime, let alone within each of those careers 4 or 5 different employers that you work for. And so the turnover in the new labor force is every 3 or 4 years, if not faster. So you have a kid. Your kid loves their primary care physician. The shots just don't hurt with this one, but others it's been really painful. You get a new job, and your employer says, here's our offerings. We got Cigna and Aetna. Good luck. And you say, well, I like Kaiser, or I like Blue Cross. You should be able to make sure that your family can stay in network with their doctor by converting that policy. Now, what will this do in the healthcare market? Instead of insurance companies going and talking over at Evening Creek and trying to convince Ashford and Bridgepoint, hey, let's make a deal. This is what you'll offer your employees, right? They're now going to be interested in you because you have the ability to take any policy and exchange it on the exchange for a different policy. You can now actually add money to the policy. You could put some savings into a health savings account. Let's also make it even more competitive. Let insurance companies offer health plans across state lines. These insurance companies, they're like big colleges and universities. They like the old model. They didn't want to change a big part of the old healthcare system, which is they don't like interstate competition. Why? Because, hey, we got 3 health companies in California, and they're dominant. Blue Cross Blue Shield of California is not the same as Blue Cross Blue Shield of Connecticut. So why not let them compete across state lines? More competition, as we see in graduate education, college education. More competition means more innovation, more choices for consumers, and I believe, as you've all shown, lower prices. Again, all of this stuff requires that you not take a look at the label of party authorship on a bill. I think a lot of people are looking at Obamacare and just attacking it because it's a Democrat idea, and a lot of people are taking a look at some of these other ideas and attacking it because they're Republican ideas. Stop it. Focus on what you agree with, and I think most of the American people agree with certain reforms in healthcare that we need to be making. One last question, quick one. Oh, it's my fault for giving long answers.
One last question. Mr. DeMaio, thank you for
Call
being
me
here.
Carl, please.
Carl. I like the fact that you cleared that up with your healthcare ideas because I do think that that would eliminate the whole pre-existing condition issue. But on immigration reform, what specific suggestions would you make to Congress? And do you think there's a difference between securing the border and immigration reform?
Yes. Okay, so on immigration reform, the first foundation needs to be secure the border first. There are a number of changes we need to make in the immigration system. It's clearly broken because people come here under the rules. Most of them come here under the rules. They want to earn citizenship or they want to work, and suddenly it takes so long, the process breaks down, and suddenly now they're told, sorry, too late, gotta go. But those changes have to be preceded by securing the border because we can make all the changes we want in immigration process and streamline it. If you don't secure the border, then there will be additional issues that will come up. in addition to immigration issue, it's also a national security issue in an era of ISIS and other forces. So secure the border first, check the box. What do we do on immigration? I think we need to move from the lottery system to a strategic approach. Right now, if you're lucky enough to get your number called, you get to get your status and then bring other people in. I want us to say, no, we are looking for skills in this country. We are trying to build a stronger country. And so we have criteria, we have metrics as to what sort of programs we have in different visas. And California gets 33 doctor visas. I have no idea why 33 doctors would want to go to South Dakota. But I know a lot more want to come to California. And we need those doctors here. And so what I would say is, look, let's not just do this lottery system. Let's have certain requirements as part of the visa program. As part of that doctor visa program, I would require that they do pro bono work in our community health system. Come here, it's an opportunity. Part of that opportunity is that you contribute to a stronger America, and that's going to be part of the visa. Third, the Republicans talk about individuals who break the law. You broke the law. You overstayed your time. You got to go home. All right, well, how about the businesses that break the law too? All right? You can't call out one group for breaking the law and then turn around and recognize that a lot of big businesses are taking advantage of cheap labor. And so let's make E-Verify a standard requirement as well as greater enforcement. If you have a company that repeat offends, then we ought to have sanctions and enforcement against them. Finally, I think that the biggest challenge we have here is tone. You have people on one side who say that if you don't agree with everything that they have to say, that you're racist. And people on the other side talk about individuals who want to come to this country and have the same opportunity of the American dream as we do, as somehow, I won't even describe it, it's offensive. And that's coming from my party, it's offensive. And so let's cool the rhetoric here. In San Diego, one of the things I'm most proud of, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, but it's something I've noted going around the country. San Diego has immense diversity. I mean, think about the different types of ethnicities, the different types of socioeconomic views, right here in this city, different experiences, because why? We come from everywhere. San Diego is a migrant city. We come from everywhere. Where do you live? Most people are not born in San Diego. It's a lot of people from around the country and around the world. Despite our diversity, we are a pretty tranquil, laid-back, respectful city. You go to other cities, like maybe Detroit or other parts of the country.
Or Washington.
Or, well, that's for a different reason. You have great diversity, but not great tranquility and respect. And so I'm going to pitch this out there, and you all will understand. I'm hoping people in San Diego and DC will understand. I want to bring a San Diego tone and tenor to the immigration debate, which is stop demonizing people. Let's start looking at fixing the system. If we agree on 80% of the issues, let's get them done. And then let's fight about the 20% we don't. But let's agree that there are certain reforms that we have to make that most people, most intelligent, reasonable people want to see happen. Now, you're not going to agree with me 100% of the time. Politicians have learned the art of saying things in such broad stroke. I call it the cotton candy talk of politics. It's, fluffy rhetoric of broadness. Why? Because they don't want you to disagree with that. And they don't want you to think that you're not on their side. Then they vote a certain way that you don't like, and they're like, oh, I told you I was on this position. In business, we call that misunderstood agreement. I'd rather have us have understood disagreement, but that you know that we agree with clarity, and that I'm frank and blunt on 80% of the issues that you say, yeah, I really like his position on it. And so it leaves me with a Ronald Reagan quote, and it's not because he's Republican, it's just because he came up with a really good quote that I think both sides need to take to heart. He said, if we disagree on 20% of the issues, you're not my 20% enemy. You're my 80% ally. If we had both parties, leaders of both parties, start approaching issues from that standpoint, we'd get a lot more done. I'm committed to taking that approach in Washington, as I did on the City Council, but I can't do it without your help. Please spread the word. Turn off the TV. Don't listen to the attack ads. Spread the word, and let's change this country. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks to all of you for taking the time to hear Mr. DeMaio speak, or Carl, I should say. So for more information about